The tractor screeched to a halt, nearly launching me through the windshield. One moment, I'm sipping coffee in my peaceful field. The next, I'm staring at neon cables strangling my tractor like industrial tentacles. No permits. No warnings. Just corporate logos on a tag dangling from the chaos. My land. Their secret. But why bury fiber optics here? The answer would spark a war with the most power-hungry HOA in America and prove they picked the wrong farmer to cross. My mind raced between anger and confusion. Who had the gall to plant fiber optic cable under my property without a single heads-up? I tried yanking it free, but it was buried deep, professionally deep. I spotted a tiny plastic tag with a serial number and some corporate logo I didn't recognize. The cable snaked through my field like a neon orange serpent on a mission to destroy my morning, my tractor, and possibly my sanity. I scoured every county notice I could find. Permits, alerts, letters, nothing. No one had told me they'd be slicing through my soil. That alone was suspicious, but it got worse when I checked my security footage. I'd installed cameras after someone tried to swipe my chicken coop last year, so I had a clear view of everything that happened here. Sure enough, the footage showed men digging at dawn, professionals. But professionals don't work for HOAs unless there's profit involved. They arrived in unmarked white trucks, hopped out in reflective vests, and got to work fast, like a commando unit on a covert mission. Not a single knock on my door, no wave, no courtesy note. Just an illegal operation under the cover of sunrise. Infuriated, I called my buddy Randy. Randy's the kind of guy who keeps a bug-out bag in his truck and swears pigeons are government drones. But weirdly enough, he's useful when things don't add up. He came over, took one look at the cable, and said, Randy brought jerky, a flashlight, and conspiracy theories. For once, I hoped he was right. At first, he joked it might be the NSA. Then he said something that made me stop laughing, or the HOA. Immediately, my gut twisted. Karen's HOA had been circling my property for years like vultures. Now they'd crossed from nuisance to thieves. Their borders had been expanding in all but name, absorbing easements, setting up weird trash collection mandates, and even controlling the neighborhood's Wi-Fi contract. My place sat just outside their official jurisdiction, a final bit of farmland they didn't yet rule. But apparently, that hadn't stopped them from running cables into my soil. As if summoned by my anger, Karen herself, the board president, rolled up in a glossy SUV with tinted windows. She strutted over, flashing a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. It was the kind of smile that said, I'm about to wreck your life, but let's pretend we're friends. She looked at the tangled mess under my tractor and nodded primly. Oh, you found our installation, she chirped, like I'd stumbled across a free gift basket. I glared. You mean the one wrecking my tractor and trespassing across my land? Karen's smile dripped condescension. Community project. Like stealing my land was a charity. My blood was boiling. Karen, this is my field. You don't get to vote on what happens here. She waved a dismissive hand, talking to me as though I were an unruly student. We needed the line to run through somewhere, and your property was the most direct route to the main road. It's not like we built a house on it. Her smugness set my teeth on edge. I'm about to build a lawsuit on it, I said. She only smirked. If you want to get legal, you'll find everything's above board. I knew a bluff when I heard one, so I called my cousin Lydia, part-time land use attorney who treats zoning laws like sport. If anyone could unravel this, she could. By nightfall, we were buried in documents, county filings, and official records. Turns out the HO had gone totally rogue. No permits, no recorded easements, no compensation. It got more outrageous. They'd partnered with a local ISP to lease access rights they didn't even own, collecting monthly fees for cable that ran through my land without paying me a cent. It was so audacious I almost laughed. They weren't just trespassing, they were profiting. Karen and her board were basically renting out my property like squatters subletting a mansion. When I saw the paperwork and realized they were pocketing real money from my dirt, my anger crystallized into something colder and more dangerous. They picked the wrong farmer to cross. The next morning, I trudged out to that neon cable with a fresh thermos of stronger coffee, my brain buzzing with possibilities. I wasn't a lawyer or a CO, just a farmer with a tractor and a vendetta. But Karen forgot. Dirt breeds stubbornness. Lydia was up at dawn, too, calling the county utility office and confirming the obvious: no legitimate permits. That cable wasn't just an inconvenience, it was my golden ticket. Since no legal easement existed, I could rip it out or charge them for it. Either way, I had the upper hand. I sent Karen an email, polite, conciliatory, a little too friendly. Said I was sure there'd been a misunderstanding, that I'd be open to hearing her side before escalating anything. She replied within the hour, practically crowing about how cooperative I was. Even attached an email chain discussing the lucrative arrangement with the ISP. She had no idea she'd just handed me a signed confession. While Lydia drafted a cease and desist letter, I got to work in the field. I bought a bunch of bright yellow flags and staked them in a dotted line over every inch of buried cable. Then I hammered in wooden signs that read, "Unauthorized utility use will be prosecuted." A few signs included QR codes linking to a post I'd made online, complete with photos, security footage, and a screenshot of Karen beaming over the installation like she'd planted a community garden instead of orchestrating trespass and fraud. Later that day, I got a text from Bryce, a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd raced dirt bikes as kids before he moved away to start a tech company. Turns out he was back and had launched something called Lightning Link Fiber. He'd been trying to expand service around here, but the HOA's exclusive ISP deal kept locking him out. He'd seen my post, cackling so hard he could barely speak. If you had legal access, I asked, could you offer the entire neighborhood better speeds and lower rates? He didn't hesitate. Absolutely. That's how Operation Steal the Signal was born. Lydia wrote up official documents granting Bryce the right to lay cable parallel to the HOA's line, legally this time. He put a junction box near my property line, serving the same residents the HOA was overcharging, but at half the price for triple the speed. Karen was about to discover that playing dirty in farmland has consequences. Sure enough, the moment Bryce and I kicked off our local flyer campaign, bright blue mailers promising better internet, no HOA markups, Karen's composure started cracking. She emailed me, sounding less smug, and asked for a formal sit-down. Translation: they realized they'd messed up and wanted to contain the damage. But Bryce and I were way ahead of her. Neighbors called, excited at the prospect of dumping the HOA's pricey plan. One man complained he'd been paying over $100 a month for spotty service, unaware the board took a kickback. Then came the retaliation. I found passive-aggressive notes taped to my mailbox. Your actions hurt the community, and traitor. Could have been Karen, could have been a bored teenager. Either way, it only made me double down. A week after my signs went up, I caught Karen and 2 board members skulking around my fields, pretending to birdwatch while eyeballing my cable markers. I walked out, phone camera rolling. Private property, I shouted. Trespassing is a crime. Should I call the sheriff or just post this video on Nextdoor? Karen went crimson. The other 2 scuttled away, muttering about how they were just getting their steps in. You can't hijack our infrastructure, Karen snapped. I raised an eyebrow. Your infrastructure? You laid it illegally on my land. I own the dirt, and now I own the leverage. She threatened me with lawyers. I shrugged. I already have one. Find an attorney who knows the difference between a public easement and private land. That evening, a regional manager from the ISP Karen had partnered with called me. Calm, professional, but definitely sweating. He suggested a new agreement, maybe even revenue sharing. I reminded him their entire contract with the HOA was based on land the HOA didn't own. It was void. If they wanted to keep their lines in place, they could negotiate with me or rip them out. Faced with a potential PR disaster and the cost of removing miles of cable, he said he'd talk to his higher-ups. I stepped outside, sipped a well-deserved whiskey, and smiled at the moonlit rows of soil. If Karen wanted a war, she'd get one. Once our flyers hit mailboxes, the neighborhood turned on the HOA fast. Their so-called exclusive deal wasn't exclusive anymore, and once people had a choice, they started asking inconvenient questions. Complaints flooded HOA meetings. Neighbors showed up waving those bright blue flyers like torches, demanding to know where the money from ISP markups had gone. Karen tried to frame it as a community benefit fund, but she clammed up when Jeff, a longtime resident, demanded financial records. She ended that meeting on the spot, but the seeds of revolt were planted. Meanwhile, Bryce's team laid new cables across my field with total transparency, permits, inspections, the works. They installed a main hub just 10 feet from the illegal line the HOA had buried. Neighbors switched to Lightning Link in droves, each installation unveiling more secrets about the HOA's hidden fees. Karen's inbox must have looked like a war zone. And that's when the sabotage began. Knocked over signs, dog poop on Bryce's trailer, footprints in the mud near our new trenches. One night, someone tried digging up Bryce's line, only to be blasted by the motion-activated sprinklers I'd installed. The footage of a hooded figure getting soaked and face-planting in the dirt hit the neighborhood Facebook group. The comment threads lit up with jokes and heated debates, dividing the community into pro- and anti-HOA factions overnight. Then an unexpected ally emerged. Greg, a mild-mannered retiree on the HOA board who cracked under pressure. Anonymously, he sent me every incriminating document he had access to, meeting minutes, invoices, payoff details. Turned out the HOA had raked in tens of thousands in undeclared revenue. None of it went to the residents. Incensed, I built a simple website, slapped all the evidence on it, and called it Karen Date, the fiber scandal. Within 24 hours, it went viral in the neighborhood. Refund demands piled up, and some people even threatened to hold protests in front of the HOA office. At the next HOA meeting, Karen tried to restore order, but wound up looking like a substitute teacher on the last day of school. Shouting, demands for refunds, board resignations, it was chaos. Karen slammed her gavel so hard it snapped. She stormed out amid sarcastic applause. A few days later, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. Two suited men emerged, polite but tense. They were from the ISP's corporate office. Over coffee so strong it could strip paint, they admitted their lines now sat on unauthorized land. If I cut them off, hundreds of homes would lose service. Bad press, unhappy customers, the works. I waited, let them sweat, then offered a deal. They could keep their equipment in place if they terminated their HOA contract, acknowledged they'd messed up, and renegotiated directly with me at a much higher rate. I spelled out the new numbers, enough for me to buy a new tractor, invest in land improvements, and recoup my wasted time. They tried lowballing me, so I walked them outside, pointed at the splice box, and said, 1 shovel, 20 minutes, and it's gone. That ended the haggling. Later that week, the contract was signed. Suddenly, I had 2 ISPs leasing my land. The old one, now paying a premium, and Bryce's new one, forging ahead with big plans to expand. I was earning more a month than I ever had selling hay. Bryce was over the moon, and he even handed me an advisory title in his growing company. I made a mental note to add Fiber Mogul to my business cards. Karen, meanwhile, was unraveling. With the board in open revolt, residents canceling her overpriced service, and her dream of an internet monopoly torpedoed, she tried every trick in the book: noise complaints, aesthetic, grievances about the new junction box, accusations that I was running an illicit data center out of my barn. I posted a tongue-in-cheek video tour revealing a few dusty servers by my chicken feed. The internet loved it. Memes popped up overnight, many featuring Karen as some medieval inquisitor chasing Wi-Fi signals with a torch. To celebrate our progress, I hosted a field open house. Free snacks, lemonade, a quick presentation by Bryce on how internet cables actually worked. Families rolled in with lawn chairs, kids chased each other around with homemade Lightning Link versus HOA flags, and one guy wore a shirt that said, "Plow the system." As I surveyed the crowd, I realized this was about more than me protecting my property. The neighborhood was bonding in a way I'd never seen. People were forging friendships over their shared frustration at being fleeced. Karen's rule by secrecy had ended, replaced by transparency and choice. Of course, she wasn't giving up without a final swing. She filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I'd obstructed community agreements and operated an unauthorized business. She even listed my field as common access land in the official filing, like typing it into a document made at hers. Lydia laughed so hard she practically fell off the porch when we read that. Then she said about crafting our countersuit: trespassing, fraud, misuse of property, even potential tax evasion, since the HOA had never declared that ISP income. With Greg's whistleblower emails and Bryce's schematics, our evidence was rock solid. In court, under the dull hum of fluorescent lights, Karen's attorney tried to frame me as some uncooperative stick in the mud who jeopardized the neighborhood's connectivity. He called their secret cable drop a community enhancement initiative, which made the judge's eyebrows climb. Then Lydia presented our side, page after page of unpermitted work, shady contracts, secret profits. She showed aerial photos, time-stamped camera footage of the Dawn dig, and the emails that spelled out Karen's plan in black and white. The judge finally looked at Karen and asked if she'd consulted me before burying the cable. She stammered something about community interest overriding my property. The judge simply said, "That's not how land ownership works." With that, the HOA's suit was dismissed and our countersuit sailed. They owed me damages for unauthorized land use, plus fines for misappropriation and breach of fiduciary duty. The judge even noted the HOA's failure to disclose profits to residents. Karen's expression when she heard the word restitution was priceless. Bryce and I grabbed celebratory gas station tacos on the way home. Strange choice, but it felt right. Word about our victory spread quickly, and folks from other HOA-locked neighborhoods started calling me for advice. I felt like the fiber optic Robin Hood. Predictably, Karen tried one more Hail Mary. She filed a nuisance report claiming the new junction box endangered birds, messed with migration patterns, and made a neighbor's dog bark more. The county inspector came out, took one look, and asked if this was a prank. Seeing our official permits, he just shook his head and left. With that, Karen held an emergency HOA meeting. Bryce and I attended for entertainment. About 20 residents showed up, brandishing lawn chairs and wearing Free the Fiber shirts. Karen drew some nonsense diagrams on a whiteboard, ranted about restoring order, and tried to rally the crowd. Jeff cut her off, demanding she reveal how much money the board had taken. Another voice yelled, "Where's the money now?" The floodgates opened. People bombarded Karen with questions, the whiteboard got smudged, and her voice wavered. By the end of the night, the group voted her out as HOA president. She stormed off without another word. A new board formed, and Greg returned as treasurer. Jeff took over communications. To my surprise, they asked me to be an advisor. Not because I'm known for being diplomatic, but because I'd proven I can spot a scam from a mile away. I agreed, on the condition that any major infrastructure plan had to be publicly voted on, and no project could be approved without the property owner's explicit consent. Then Bryce made me an offer: install a permanent, solar-powered microstation on my land, turning it into a regional hub for not just this neighborhood, but several others nearby. I'd get equity and ongoing revenue, plus a seat on his company's advisory board. We broke ground a couple of weeks later. Karen? She moved away. Rumor said she tried joining another HOA across town, but after someone forwarded them a link to my Karen Gate site, her application got lost in bureaucratic limbo. Her old house sold to a young couple who put flamingos in the front yard and named their Wi-Fi HOA_rest_and_peace. I sent them a welcome basket. Watching the microstation framework rise in the same dirt Karen once dismissed felt surreal. She treated my field like it was worthless, and now it was home to cutting-edge tech feeding hundreds of homes, and they appreciated it. The day we laid the final cables into the hub, the sky was a wash of orange and gold. Neighbors brought lawn chairs, grills, and a little party broke out. One girl suggested naming the station Freedom Tower, which got a big cheer. Greg set up a podium for short speeches. Bryce played a slideshow, pausing on the sprinkler footage of Karen's midnight sabotage attempt, which drew a standing ovation. After that comedic interlude, I took the makeshift stage and cleared my throat. I kept it short. I told them how it started, a busted tractor tangled in neon cable. How I discovered strangers had just decided my land was theirs to use. It wasn't really about the cable. It was about ownership, respect, and accountability. People who assume they can take without asking need someone to stand up and say, "Not this time." I thanked everyone for speaking out, for proving that unity and a bit of stubborn resolve can topple entitlement. Once I finished, folks came by, sharing stories of frustration with the old regime. Some admitted they'd been afraid to voice concerns before. Now they felt empowered. One person joked I should run for office. I nearly spit out my lemonade. The morning after, I took a walk around my land. The microstation hummed softly in the distance, the sunrise illuminating cables buried beneath the soil, my soil. No more sneaky dig crews, no more shady contracts. Just my farm, my rights, and a steady pulse of data passing under rows of crops. I passed the path where the HOA's illegal line still lay dormant. We'd left it there, half-rotted, a legal footnote. Someone had stuck a sign reading, "Caution, former HOA ego zone," with a doodle of Karen's scowling face. I let it be. A few days later, Lydia called with final news. The settlement checks had cleared, and the HOA had to liquidate some assets to pay the damages. The judge had also forced them to abandon certain vanity projects. Apparently, they'd wanted a marble fountain at the clubhouse. The HOA's marble fountain dreams dried up. My field? It became a monument to petty revenge with free Wi-Fi. Karen's old house went to a couple who built a skate ramp in the driveway and planted a ginormous inflatable flamingo out front. They renamed their network cable_crisis_avoided. Bryce's business boomed, using our story as a flagship example of bypassing greedy boards and offering direct service to residents. I turned my barn office into a part-time operations hub and part-time kids science project zone. We even rigged up a chicken cam, streaming in high definition to the neighborhood's Facebook page. I gained a nickname, Cable Cowboy, which was cheesy but kind of awesome. Lydia even mailed me a novelty belt buckle with a tiny router engraved on it. I wore it proudly at the next neighborhood gathering. Beneath all the jokes and celebrations, though, one lesson stuck with me: entitlement comes in many forms. Sometimes it's hidden behind corporate jargon or cloaked in community improvement rhetoric. If it involves taking without permission, someone has to push back. Once you shine a bright enough light on that kind of arrogance, it tends to shrivel fast. These days, the field is peaceful again. The wind rustles across the rows. The microstation hums away, connecting hundreds of houses at blazing speeds, all legally authorized and openly managed. Whenever I walk by, I remember how close the HOA came to bulldozing my rights. A single oversight on my part, and they'd have profited off my land for who knows how long. But that didn't happen. I paid attention, said no, and followed through. Paperwork, phone calls, a tractor on standby if anyone doubted I meant business. In the end, I didn't just take back control of my field. I gave the neighborhood something better: real competition, actual transparency, and a story to tell whenever someone asks how a farmer with a busted tractor took on an entire HOA and won.